Open Photoshop. I think we should be okay soon. Let me get my audio checked out. Dang, I already be sweating.
No pressure.
It's hot, man. I have a small fan. I might turn it on later because I'm like, we just started. I'm like already kind of moist.
Do you what's your sleeping setup? You doing like a futon or
No,
do you have like a
I have a full-on bed. I did the futon life for a couple years, but I just didn't like it. My like I had it for a while too, like a good amount of time. But wait, hold on. Why is my audio not working? It should be. Why are you not on? Hold up. Give me a sec.
Yeah, you're good.
Boom.
Yeah, I could never deal with the futons. I tried it for a bit and just woke up drenched in sweat every time having to wring it out.
Oh, really? It was like too hot?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, well,
weird.
I lived in like the southern part too, so I'm sure it's still bad where you are though.
Ah.
But yeah, it would just we'd have to actually take it to the laundromat each week, like that was just normal.
Oh, that's wild, dude.
It's crazy.
What is going on with my audio? Why is it not playing? You guys can hear. Can you guys hear music on your side, Discord side?
I don't hear it on Discord side. Let me go
Oh.
to.
Huh.
I can hear it on YouTube.
Wait, can you hear my audio on YouTube?
Yeah, I can hear your audio on YouTube.
Oh. Okay.
Wait, your Discord stream's not up yet, right? Am I crazy?
The Discord. Yeah. The stream's not up yet. I'm still trying to figure out audio right now.
Okay, my bad.
Wait, YouTube's playing? Why is it not? Why can't I hear that? Let's see. Hold on. Hold the phone. Let's go to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear the audio on YouTube, music and everything.
Can you hear me talking?
Yes.
Oh, that's weird. Maybe it's my internet? No, that's odd.
What's going on?
No music in there. Alright, hold up. Something be the wrongs. Hold up.
Good.
Can we do this? No, can't do that. Very faint beat. Okay, yeah. It's supposed to be very faint. So if you're hearing like very slight, that's fine. It's mostly like Ian, if you can hear me, we should be okay. Let me know if that audio sounds weird at all compared to usual. I don't know why my computer isn't playing it back to me. I usually like mute my setup, but I can't hear anything from YouTube right now. So, but if it's working, it'd be working. So. All right, let's get into this. Just let me know if there's any issues anywhere, whether it's Discord or you know, anywhere else or YouTube, right? So let's see. Share screen. Boom. Screen one. Let's go. All right. So welcome to the July live stream, right? So we're starting a new month. We'll recap kind of what we did this coming or what we did last month to kind of get us to this point. There's some I guess topic things, right, that is kind of going to lead into what we're doing for hard surface here, right? So we're doing hard surface design. For those that were part of the live stream plus, they got to vote on that topic. I also did a secondary topic voting where I actually asked them what topic they want me to do within hard surface, like, you know, architecture, vehicle, props, etc. And we actually settled on architecture. And then I asked another question. I asked them a lot of questions. For those that don't know, if you're part of the Livestream Plus, you get to kind of decide what I'm going to be doing. So if there's anything that you want me to cover, right? Definitely, you know, please join that and, you know, participate, because, you know, you can actually get like portfolio pieces out of it. You get real feedback 4 times a month. And, you know, it's a decently good time. So with this month, right, we're going to be doing hard surface design for architecture, and then we're going to be expanding off of last month's design, right? So last month we had form language for world building. So what we did was we gathered like a couple different audio, or not audio, sorry, a couple different references, smashed them together, and then came up with something, right? And it was kind of like our first pass at something. In reality, the like what that process kind of entails, right, really is like that first blue sky development phase. Whenever I get an assignment from somebody, from either a client or work, if it's like more blue sky development, I'll get a packet saying, okay, here's our references, here's what we were thinking, and then we need some images to kind of pitch or send to the team, whatever it is. And that's usually kind of where I mostly kind of work, right? And so the product that we actually come out with, right, is this, right? So hopefully, if you remember, for those who are watching, if you haven't, go check it out. It was pretty, hopefully pretty educational. But we started from, this disgusting sketch, right? It's just loose placement. If I kind of turn that off and on real quick, you can see where I did basically stick to it, right? There's this big kind of rock in the middle, there's some rocks in the back, and then there's like buildings in that kind of like horizon line area, and then there's like leading lines coming in. There's like a pool of like water. I was thinking like some sort of like water system kind of thing. Some rocks in the foreground over here, right? And so you can see how all of this really did come together, right? I keep it pretty loose because, if you saw it during the stream, it really only takes a couple minutes to get something like this out. And then you trust the system, right? We create a strong graphic read. We create a lighting scenario, color, and set dressing, so on and so forth. And so we'd come up with something like this, right? So this is the design, the world building that I decided to do, just create something based off of my design boards. So in this case, what we're going to do now is take one of these buildings, right? Not these specifically, like there's nothing, it's none of these in particular, but it is going to be a building that you'd probably see in this world. Because in reality, what happens in a production setting, right, is that I'll do a blue sky painting like this, and then it gets approved by whoever, right? If there's a art director, a lead, a client, or whoever, we'll kind of like look at this and be like, wow, that's really cool. Let's develop it further. And then they'll kind of fine tooth comb it, and they'll be like, oh, we really like, this area over here. Can you like define that? And so in the 3D model, I'd bring a camera over and then take a screenshot, paint over it, do whatever. In this case, I don't have a model. This was, just straight 2D. But the next logical step for, this in a work setting is starting to really define what those buildings are doing, right? Right now, we have generic building. We have a building that's like generally kind of what it's supposed to look and feel like, but none of the designs are actually truly there yet, right? So going back to, here, let me grab my files here. Where is thing? Boom. Live stream. Nope. All right, not that one. It's June. All right, I'll open week. Actually, I'll open week 2. That way you can kind of see the finished one instead. There you go. So we did this one, right? This was the kind of architecture pass. And like I was saying before, a lot of this is just kind of placeholders, a lot of things that kind of like give me a vibe of the area. But if you actually zoom in, there's no real design here. It's just a bunch of like bad bashing and just kind of stitching things together, smashing it around, and hopefully something cool kind of comes out of it, right? And so now this is when we solve that, right? In a normal production setting, we're kind of working from large to small, right? We figure out the big details, right? The big overarching, location where we're like, that's a really cool location. We really like that. And then, we're like, cool, let's commit more money into this project or into this location. And then we do a couple more designs, right? So that's the logical way that we kind of go about things in production. And this is actually the way I recommend people going and doing their portfolio as well. in my ENT1 classes, and every time I do a mentorship, and in various classes like that, I always recommend do like a 70-80% painting, right? Like, and this is about 70-80%, right? Maybe a little bit further, but it's not definitely, I wouldn't consider this like done, right? This is about 70-80% because it gives us enough where it's like the mood, the lighting, the tone, and then you have a bit of architecture in there, and like you kind of look at the whole thing rather than a very specific building. You know what I'm saying? And then flip the page on the portfolio, and then you get the next shot, which is going to be a building, isolated, fully designed out, fully functional, 100% ready to understand, right? Because right now, in a concept art setting, right, in like a model or in a production setting, we wouldn't really be able to send this to a modeler and have them be able to do it 100%, right? A really good modeler will do pretty well, right? Like, a modeler that really knows what they're doing, has a lot of experience, and is used to looking at concept art, can probably do something like this pretty easily. It won't be 100%. It'll be a lot of their input because this kind of gets the medium or large and medium shapes, but the small shapes kind of gets left up to them. But in a real like actual concept art setting, we need to go deeper, right? We need this to feel. We need this to kind of work in a like for like lower level modelers too. We need to really spell things out sometimes, and that's what we're gonna do next. So. But yeah, I guess just a recap on like kind of how this painting went, right? So we had, if I remember, yeah, here you go. This is week 2, and then this was week 3 right here, right? So pretty crappy, to be honest. Like if you if you look at this, right, it's really interesting. I like showing this process because honestly, when I did this sketch, I really wasn't feeling it that much, right? I was like, it's not really working that well, right? And then I was like, whatever, we're in the middle of a stream. Let's just commit to it, right? And so that's what I did, right? I made the sketch, and then I was like, cool. Now let's start creating that graphic read. And I started kind of pushing some things here and there. There's like a new idea kind of came in, right? Because if I'm actually looking at this here, right, I have these kind of bigger rocks, right, and I have what these horizontal lines are, and they were actually intending to be buildings, right? It's supposed to be kind of like this kind of rounder building kind of thing, right? And I did kind of follow that, but I went into the graphic read and then I started adding to it. I lowered that building line just a little bit, right? But I started kind of adding these bigger, rounder kind of shapes because we're talking about the Stonehenge idea. And so like you can kind of see new ideas starting to come in. And at the beginning, this was supposed to be a ground plane. This was supposed to be, like a floor that they could walk on. And I was thinking this would be water, right? Ultimately, I ended up not liking that. And then I got to this week here because this is actually the week that I went to see the actual event, right? The real life reference, for those that don't remember. Going back to week 0? No, week 1. Yeah, here you go. So if you remember, right, I had a reference board, big, medium, small. It was a lever, a special machine, Stonehenge, and a crow. And then the whole location I was redesigning was like Gifu, Japan. And then there was the ukai fishing, right? And I actually went to this event that week. And that kind of changed things just a little bit more, right? I actually have a photo. Like if you actually go to the river where this happens, it's kind of rocky under the bridge. So there's this bridge and there's like a bunch of rocks kind of coming out of it. It's like a shallow shoreline kind of thing, right? And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I just put it in there because I was standing in a spot, right? And there was like, boats and stuff happening, right? And there was like rocks just all along the shore, water kind of going in and out of it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And so I brought that in. I was like, I want that experience because that's what I experienced as I was there, right? And so I did that. It's looking a little bit better. I started being a little more happy with kind of where it's at, but it really wasn't quite there yet. I kind of just set the mood in a more ambient kind of way. And then eventually, right, leading into the final painting we did, right, this is how it ended up, right? I kind of pushed it a little bit further from there and then set dress with the exact buildings that I had from this week here, right? I didn't really paint any new buildings, right? I kind of bashed them together and fixed it. I added that underside for the ellipse to make them feel solid. You know, I kind of made things not so flat because everything's there's no real perspective happening here. It's just all like, you know, flat. And so, you know, from there we have a painting that's decently okay, right? And now we need to actually make some buildings. We need to make something that looks cool. So hopefully that like process kind of made sense. And you can kind of see how organic it is. You can see how every week I'm trying to add something and I'm trying to bring in new ideas just because I have some designs and just because I have a sketch, right, doesn't mean I need to stick 100% to it, right? There's things that can change. There's ideas that can evolve along the way. And ultimately it's going to make things feel much better, right? And I think one of the bigger, I guess, things that I try to do whenever I'm painting and designing is trust the process and work as simple as possible, right? Working from, you know, large to small and not worrying about a lot of the details later when you're worrying about the big things in the front, right? Like you're worrying about the main reads, the main general understanding of the space, the layout, and I'm not really worried about all the architecture because I already did that, right? I don't need to actually include too much of it quite yet in this stage because we're kind of covering like layout, graphic read, lighting, mood, right? There's already so many things to juggle. I try to separate things out as much as possible. This way, you know, things kind of can be, you can kind of tackle things in like a bite-sized kind of manner, right? So hopefully that all makes sense. If there's any questions on that, definitely, you know, leave it in the comments, ask it to me in the Discord, you know, whichever. But yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. So with this month, right, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be kind of breaking down a couple different steps on like how I go about making like, you know, a hard surface design. In this case, it's going to be one of those buildings and talking about some various things that, you know, I think about as I'm doing it and then, you know, kind of finishing it out. I'm like debating if I should use 3D or not. I think the main reason is because, you know, different levels of people follow this. So I'm kind of like, you know, hesitant to use any 3D because you kind of just lose people that are a little more entry level. And the people that use 3D, they already know how to do it. So they just do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, there's not a lot to explain there. But I might. Mainly because like architecture sucks. It doesn't suck, but you know, it does get a lot easier with 3D. But maybe not. Maybe I'll do it without. I'll think about that as I'm explaining things. So this first week, right, we're gonna be talking about form versus function, and I don't have like a long drawn out thing to kind of talk about it, but I'm just gonna kind of start working, and I'll kind of show you some things as I'm thinking about it, right? So. You know, cool. Let's get into it. So I'm gonna close this. I don't need this anymore. I actually probably need this page, right? Don't need this one. Boom. Don't need this one. And I'll leave this reference board up. So because we're continuing our project from last month, right? You're not really gonna see me do a lot of ideation, right? So if you're starting from scratch, if you're somebody that is starting like a brand new project or whatever it is, look back at my week 1 for June, right? And look at how I kind of break down shapes and I, you know, basically how I'm doing this page. This is kind of where I'm starting this week, but if you haven't done it yet, right, you would need to do that. Or at least that would be a step that might be interesting for you to kind of, you know, establish shape and design. We already did that, so just kind of go back and watch that week if you haven't. But I'm going to be kind of like deriving my my design from this sheet here because we already did the form language, right? So there's a little bit less ideation, but a little more focus on like how and why the building's doing what it does, right? So we have an espresso lever machine, we have Stonehenge, we have a crow, and we have this fountain pen. So what I'm going to do is I want to make a coffee shop, right? So in Japanese culture, right, there's tea ceremony and various things like that. And you always get this, it's very like, I won't say like a religious experience, but it really is something like, you know, it's a whole thing. They don't call it a tea ceremony for nothing, right? And so what I want to do is like, well, my thing is based off of coffee, right? Or I have a coffee machine in there. So I was like, oh, what if they have like a coffee ceremony type thing, right? And I want it, and it's not going to be like just walking up and like, you know, getting a coffee at Starbucks. It's going to be a whole different thing. And I want to create a building for that, right? And this is kind of the first thing that you want to think about whenever you start actually designing, right? Because I want to really hammer home the difference between designing this way and designing what I'm actually going to be talking about in a second. And this way, like the board we're looking at right now, this is more for form language and just general ideas and shape, right? We're just trying to mix ideas. We're just trying to come up with something that looks okay, right? But it's generic building. It's just a husk. There's no function to that building yet, right? Now, I want to take these forms and then apply it to a specific building, a building with function, a building with purpose, so on and so forth. So understand that when you do this phase, you're really looking for only like shape designs and a couple other things, right? You know, you're not really diving too deep into how the thing works. It really just kind of needs walls and needs, you know, just like a roof, right? But now that we're getting into the level 2, right, going, you know, one step deeper into how this stuff actually works, we want to know what type of building we're designing. So if you're doing a vehicle, if you're doing an architecture, if you're even doing a prop, right, all of these things have a function to it. There's a reason this thing exists. If it's not useful, it just basically becomes a statue, right? And so the first big thing that you want to understand is that when you design your thing, right, your hard surface, right, whatever that is, whether it's a vehicle or architecture or prop, you need to understand what package it is, right? There's hard points and there's soft points when it comes to packages. So I'll just kind of quickly explain this in a new document. Boom. So there is, like, let's talk about a car, for example, right? Cars are generally easier to understand. Buildings can kind of be a little more ambiguous, right? But cars, whenever you're like breaking down designs, right? Let's say I want to build a car. The first question is, well, what kind of car, right? Because you have, you know, let's do, there you go. Look at that. Can you believe I get paid for this? Boom. All right, we got car, right? And we got a window, we got a door. You know how it is. Cool, right? Beautiful looking car. So this thing is going to be, you know, driving around, right? So the thing to understand, right, is that when you have a car, there's a function to it, right? Because if you have a car that's, you know, is it a sports car? Is it a sedan? Like, is it a station wagon? Is it a van? Is it a SUV? You know what I mean? Every vehicle has a purpose to it, and they design around that purpose, right? If you have a truck, there's usually some sort of container in the back, right? The truck bed, and it's supposed to, you know, generally speaking, you're supposed to drive it and use it. Not saying that always happens, but you know, it's something where when people drive trucks, they usually need that space for something to carry things, to tow things, so on and so forth. It's a little more utilitarian versus like a sports car. The idea is go fast. And so when you go fast, right, the form of the car changes, right? There's some things that can change, but there's also things that can't, right? And so when we talk about hard points versus soft points, we want to understand that there's hard points, right? Like the distance the wheels are apart, right? And how many doors there tends to be, right? Like, you know, like I think like doors tend to be like a medium point, like, you know, not hard in the sense that it can't move, but not soft in the sense that you don't need one, right? And then there's like, you know, there's let's say if this was like a truck, right? Let's erase this. Let's actually make this a truck. Look at that. Beautiful. Let's go. So, you know, we have a truck here. And so, you know, the another hard point is that there needs to be some sort of container system, right? And so really what you're trying to figure out is what are the hard points of my vehicle? What are the things that I need to have in there? Because if it doesn't have it, it doesn't work. If it doesn't have wheels, it's probably not a vehicle, right? Or probably not a car, you know? It's probably like maybe a boat or a plane. Shit, even planes have wheels, right? And it's something where you want to understand what needs to be there, right? The shape of the truck, there's a general kind of shape, but they're not really exact. And that's where you get a lot of freedom, right? And then the amount of stuff it needs to hold, right? There's pickup trucks, right? There's small, those old Toyota hard body trucks. There's like K trucks, and then there's like dump trucks, right? And each one kind of carries something different. And so when you understand what this thing is supposed to be doing, you want to kind of design around that, right? Oftentimes, we get into this zone of we're just designing, right? We're just making something. It's like, oh, I need to make a vehicle. Great. And you just kind of start making shapes and putting wheels on it. But the I guess the different proportions will change according to the way you designed out the thing, right? So for example, if I had a shape like this, actually, let's just do this. Boom. So if I had a shape like that, right? Like, once we know what the hard points are, we start trying to figure out like how do we show that, right? If I had a shape like this, it doesn't feel very fast, right? It's just a circle. It's just a there's no directionality to it. There's no general it's pretty neutral when it comes to the feeling of that shape. It feels safe, right? It feels there's no like sharp corners or anything, but overall it's not fast, or it doesn't really look like it looks like more of a container, I guess, right? Like just the feeling of that circle, right? If I were to change that and stretch it out, that feels faster, doesn't it? And then the more you stretch that out, the faster it starts feeling, right? The more the flatter that gets, the faster it starts feeling, right? And so when I need to design a vehicle, if I need to design a spaceship that's like, that looks like it's fast, right? I'd create something that has this faster shape to it versus something that is more of a container, right? Maybe it starts getting taller, right? Maybe it starts getting bigger, right? You're thinking like cargo ships versus like sports car, right? There's a whole different function to it. And so when you start designing your thing, right, whatever it is, you want to show it in a way that kind of describes things, right? When you see a dump truck, right? Let's see. Let me Google an image. Dump truck. All right. Cool. Let's grab this one. All right. So, so when you have a truck like this, right? There's, if you might not have seen one before. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Like most people have seen something like this, right? But you might not have seen this exact one, but you generally know what it does. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a perceived function when you are designing, vehicles like this, right? Most things, like especially like, me now in a different country, like, I don't know what some of these things are, but I generally have a faint idea. You can kind of tell when something's construction equipment, when something's farm equipment, and then when something's like pedestrian, like just, or just like, owned by just random civilians, right? It's just like their car or whatever. There's a certain feeling that each one kind of gives you. And when you design, you have to understand what that is, right? Being defined about what your design package is going to help kind of push that idea across a lot easier because there's certain keys that need to be hit. So going back into my project, right? I'm trying to create a coffee shop, essentially, right? A coffee ceremony shop. So it's not exactly a coffee shop because when you look at like, let's say a coffee shop. Let's just surf Google, see what happens. So when you have a coffee shop, right? I've never been to this coffee shop, right? But you know how it works, right? There's a menu in the back. There's some sort of pastry they're selling, right? Whether they baked it or bought it, whatever. The counter is probably to the left here or to the right, one of those. And then there's seating, right? Because this place serves a function. There's a purpose to be here, right? And then there's things that I need to have, right? You kind of need to have a counter of sorts because, somebody needs to be selling things. There has to be some sort of menu thing because people need to understand what you sell there, right? And it doesn't have to be that exact format in the sense that it's like on the back wall on top, but there's got to be something for the audience or the customer to kind of come in and know how this place works, right? And so when I'm gonna be designing the exterior, right? It's gonna be one of those like half exterior, like an interior that's open to the exterior, right? If that makes sense. But we're gonna be doing something like that. But then there's some cues that I need. But like I was saying a second ago, it's going to be more of a tea ceremony shop, right? So or tea ceremony place, not shop. So looking at tea ceremony, boom, Japanese. There you go. All right, so now, right, we get a different package, right? They're still serving hot beverages, right? But there's a difference. There's a reason they do certain things. It's not, to be honest, a lot of this isn't really about just tea. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you see like third wave coffee people, they really get into like just the bullshit that coffee people get into. Like, I'm into it, so I'm not judging, but it is something where we do that, right? Where every little like thing, every couple $1,000s you get like half a percentage of like better performance out of a thing. The needle distribution thing, there's like a $500 version of basically what like a cork and like 4 needles do, right? And there's all these little things, but you don't just do it because you like black coffee, right? There's a whole ceremony to it. There's a whole ritual behind it, right? And with tea ceremony, it's the same thing. Obviously, there's the fact of drinking tea that happens, but the act of them doing the thing is part of the process, right? Very similar to art, where when we do art, right? When we do art in just for ourselves mostly, it's not just the fact that you come out at the end with a painting, right? You know what I mean? Like the painting is cool, that's why we do it, but also the act of painting is fun. The whole journey itself is part of the process. And so, when I'm trying to design this space, I need to understand that, right? Because when I design the space, I need to create a space that functions for these things, right? So let's get into this. So function, right? We know why this exists, right? Let's talk about why I actually picked tea ceremony. Because I have a reference board that talks about coffee, right? So how did I even get to the tea ceremony side, right? So looking back at my painting, do I have my painting up? I might have closed that. Boom, week 4, here you go. So if you remember when I was talking about this, right? Like I was saying with the cormorant fishing, it's not just fishing. It's not just going out and catching food for the day. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't just do it because they like the act of doing it. I mean, they'd like it, but it's not just fishing anymore, right? Like, when you go out and you just cast in the dock, it's not like that, right? It's a whole event. There's a time period you do it. There's a reason you do it. And it's a whole thing. It's a cultural heritage thing, right? And so, there's this kind of ritual aspect to it, right? And then, Stonehenge has this kind of like, magical kind of feel to it, right? It's like the wonder of like how it got there, like how long this has been going on. And, I'm leaning into that more ritual aspect. That's why when you look at the painting, even though it's like a civilization, it's built around this idea, right? There's this kind of central kind of religious area, right? We can design that further later. But the whole area is kind of built around that idea. You can kind of feel it. You can kind of hear it, right? And so that's why instead of just opening a coffee shop in this space, right, I'm creating a space where, instead of a tea ceremony idea, instead of a coffee shop idea where they just go in, buy coffee and leave, or even sit down and drink it, it's a whole thing. The whole space is a religious space, right? It feels more like spiritual in this area. And that's what we're doing. And so I kind of started fusing different ideas together, right? Coffee because of the reference board, and then a similar, I guess, act but that has also a kind of experience to it, right? Which is tea ceremony, right? So we're just kind of like changing out the beverage in that idea, right? I make it sounds cheap when you say it that way, but you know what I'm saying. So, let's get into this. Let's see, what else do I have to talk about? This chocolate's done. Let's see. Cool. Yeah, I think that's it. So, I quick question for everybody here, right? The ones that show up are the ones that get to vote, right? What would you guys rather see me do? You want to see me do some basic 3D, or would you rather see me just paint it from scratch? I can do both, or I can do not both. I can do either. Just curious. You can type it in the live stream chat. Type it in or live stream chat on Discord or YouTube, and we'll kind of see what the general consensus is, or just call it out if anybody here is like, "Hey, I really want to see you do it in 3D."
I'm cool with either, but I kind of do want to see 3D just because I feel like I know you're like usually all about the 2D, and I think it is better that way, but I guess I just kind of want to see it like from a different angle, like where you'd go with block out and then after simplifying things from there, or like how that might influence the design differently than working from 2D.
Okay, I dig that. I dig that.
Like
reason.
how do you overcome limitations of working in 3D, right? Where I feel like in 2D it's really easy to get a silhouette, but then you're working in 3D sometimes and it's almost easy to kind of get lost in the sauce of just throwing together maybe primitives or other components.
Yeah, no, I agree. I saw Greg typing. Come on, Greg. What is it, bro? Just say it, man. Just say it. You don't need to type it. I agree, 3D. Come on. All right, cool. Yeah, I can do that. Let's see. Anybody else? Anybody against it? Everyone's like, hell no. Fuck 3D. Cool. All right, let's do it. So, what I'm gonna do, right? By unanimous consent, right? I'm just gonna block something out there. I won't take it too far. I'll just do a more simple block out. I'll probably keep it to just this week. That way, people can kind of follow along, like a base 3D level, right? I'd probably take it because I remember the Dune Buggy week or project I was doing. We took that pretty far. I think it was like 2 weeks of modeling or 3 weeks of modeling, and or maybe just one. I don't know. But basically, I took it really far, and it gets to that point to where, not that it's like that difficult for people to actually know the program, right? Because if you know 3D, the stuff I was doing is janky as hell. But for those that are kind of new to it, it does get a little bit harder to follow along. So I'll kind of keep it a little bit simpler. I'll kind of block out the masses, and then we'll go from there, right? So let's talk about something really quick. So in my schedule, right, we have the idea of form versus function, right? We just talked about function. I had established the form in this for week, was this week 1? I think it was week 1. Week 1 of June, right? And so there's this kind of battle that plays between the two ideas, especially with like mechs and vehicles and various things like that. Like buildings do it too, right? Buildings are a little harder to kind of like see that in, just because there is an inherent function with the building that's pretty consistent with most buildings, right? It's like doorways, walls, roof, right? You need an entrance, you need, like an enclosure, right? Something that kind of contains everything, and you need a roof because now you're indoors, right? And so buildings is a little harder, and that's kind of what we're talking about with that function just then, right? But like vehicles especially, right? Sports car versus, dump truck. And then like weapons, right? You have a knife versus like a gun or something. There's an inherent function to it. Where form comes in, as artists, it can vary per project, right? Something that can be very hard to find the line for, right? Because some projects are very real, right? Some projects are like, hyper mechanical, and they need if an engineer built it, it would probably work, right? And then there's projects where it's like, oh, it's floating because of magic. You're like, cool. No one questions it. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter because it's like, cool, whatever. It's not a big deal that we didn't really figure it out, because the rest of that world isn't it's consistent with the world. You know what I'm saying? Because if you do something where, let's say, I had I don't know, something in this painting, right? This one. Let's say I had I I don't know, like a floating building or something, right? Or whatever. I think if the whole building is kind of floating, it starts getting a little bit weird in the sense that it's like, well, how is it floating? Because no other building is floating, right? There's this question kind of gets asked, right? Just like an Avatar, right? The blue people one, not the Airbender. There's these floating kind of like giant geostructures, right? And like there's a bunch floating. It's just part of the world. There's a wonder to it, but you don't really question it past that. But then there's some where it's like, especially like Star Wars, right? Star Wars and what was that movie? The one that everyone hated. I guess they hated all of them at some point. But they warp drive through that. It was one of the later ones. It wasn't the last one. I think it was like 8 or whatever. They warp drive through the Star Destroyer and killed it, right? And it was like, oh, it's never happened before, and everyone was like freaking out. And I was like, I mean, that's what you guys have problems with, not the rest. But the whole thing is because it's never done before, and the logic is, like it's not consistent with the world that you established, people kind of freak out. Not the fact that a lightsaber even exists, right? Not the fact that there's a spaceship at all, not the fact that the warp drive even exists, but just the fact the way they used it, because it's not consistent with the language of the world, right? And that's going to be the same thing when it comes down to the function of your world versus the things that you're designing. If you have a world that is hyper explained, where everything needs to make sense, where everything's mechanical, you have to kind of come up with a plausible solution, right? But if you have something that's like kind of like like more fantasy things have a magical kind of feeling to it, you can kind of get away with a little bit more, right? And it just depends on what that project is. So when it comes to form versus function, the biggest thing is, what's your project doing? Is it a project that allows you to kind of bend the rules like that? Or is it something where you guys already kind of explain everything, so you kind of have to explain this next thing too, For me, the after you kind of match that, right? You want to start kind of figuring out, what are some of the things that you can do differently. I had this mentorship meeting this week actually, and we were talking about design as a whole. And when I was first starting to work, I was working with some coworkers, I was working with, I was at work. There's coworkers there. There's other employees, and we were designing stuff. And one of my coworkers, he had a design, and it looked cool. Like he was like, "Oh yeah," he got really into designs, and he got really into this thing, right? And then all of a sudden, we're like, "Oh, that's this. That's this thing. It already exists." He had never seen it before, but he designed something that already exists in this world because he was so into it. He was like, because of because of like the ratio of like weight to like to the power and fuel source that this thing has, and the mechanics of like the geometry of the supports and all that stuff. You're just basically making something real, right? And the thing with artists is that we kind of function like in this weird limbo of like, you need to make it to where it looks like it works, but it doesn't have to actually work, right? You have to design something that is plausible, right? It's like, maybe, it might be highly inefficient. It might be, just like maybe there's like more efficient ways to do things, but it like kind of looks like it works. And then you kind of, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt, right? So with artists, really what we're doing, the way I like to think about it is we're designing things that's like the second thing that people kind of like the next place, like, because the first place is the thing that they actually picked, right? They picked a vehicle with 4 wheels because 4 is the most stable, right? It's like a car, and there's 4 wheels and it drives, right? There's 2 wheels steer, this and that, but they didn't pick the one with like 9 wheels, and it's like that's kind of where an artist sits. There's a level of like, it's probably not fully functional. There's probably highly inefficient things about it, but it looks kind of cool. There's something interesting about it, right? Instead of something getting lower to the ground, maybe they raise it up or whatever. There's a lot of things that we can kind of think about where there's a possibility to it, but you don't have to actually like build it, because there's no physics when it comes to painting. None of this shit's gonna be built. It's gonna be built in 3D, but things can just float in 3D, right? And really, the thing that we were talking about in the mentorship is we want to create something and then solve its problems, right? Because if you create something and you're like, oh, I'm trying to create this train and I want it to look different, but well, the trains are really heavy, so you can't put the wheels on top or they're just going to separate, you know, and then, you know, you want to have it on some sort of railing. So 2 rails probably, and then you're just making a train, you know what I mean? Versus making something that actually, you know, does something, right? He's like, oh yeah, I put like, you know, 4 containers around it, right? Just because. And it's like, yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense. And when it docks, it kind of rotates into place, right? It's like a revolver, you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, kind of like a, what is it called? A Ferris wheel, you know what I'm talking about? Where like, what if a whole Ferris wheel, what if there's like rows of Ferris wheels and the containers were like different cargoes, right? And then when it docks at a place, it unloads like that, right? And that's something where it's highly inefficient. That in real life, that would never work, right? Because there's just easier ways to do things. But in our world, you can do things like that because it looks kind of cool. All you have to do is figure out the problems that come with it. When it pulls up to a station, how does it unload? How does it, you know, how do you get the stuff from the train out? Whether it's people, whether it's supplies or whatever, right? And then you figure that out, right? You kind of solve the problems that you're bringing into the equation, if that makes sense. So, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to try to do some things. It's a building, so a lot of it, you know, it does get hard to do that. But there is a level of like, we can kind of make some things work. We can kind of fudge some things to kind of, you know, make it do a thing, and then, you know, we'll go from there. So let's see. I'll start. Let's start modeling. All right, we'll just start getting into stuff. Well, if there's any questions, let me know. We're getting into that demo side now. That was a long explanation, a lot of things to talk about, but really, like, you know, we need to kind of understand that base first, because once I start, I guess, modeling and doing stuff, I guess it gets harder to explain all that, right? But cool, let's do it. Cylinder, let's reduce that. I'll leave it at 32. That's cool. That'd be cool. Actually, I need this to be mesh cube. Boom. Scale Shift Z. 6-foot person, right? Pretty easy. Let's go. How's everybody's week been? Hopefully it's been good. I'd be chilling. Boom. All right. So first thing that we want to kind of think about, right? We have this building here, and, you know, really we're trying to figure out like what size is everything, right? Because you can have a building that is, I don't know, like 100 people deep, right? Or you can have a building with like 4. And so, you know, what do we need to do to kind of figure out what that is, right? So I did some research. Now let's get into that stuff. Boom, week 1. So tea ceremony is an actual thing, right? So I actually just looked up some images of just places that like exist, right? Like actual tea ceremony buildings, right? Standalone tea houses, essentially. Because I want this to be something where it's just kind of amongst all these buildings, and you can kind of just come up and, you know, do a thing. We're linking up this religious experience with the coffee aspect. So it's kind of like if you just to stroll up and you see like a temple, you pay your respects and you dip out, right? And so that's really what we're doing here, right? Like this whole world is kind of built off of this idea. So I kind of looked up some spaces, and I wanted this to feel more personal, right? Because we want this to be ultimately something that is a little more manageable, and you kind of see a little more function in it. Because the bigger a building gets, right, the less we have to actually to see, right? Because you just get like walls and windows, right? I wanted this to be a little bit smaller, a little more manageable, and we can kind of like dive deeper into some of those details, right? So, but I'm just looking at photos here. I like the way like some of these buildings are like sit inside of this kind of garden area, right? Especially like if you look at my painting, that I did, if I were to place this anywhere, right, it'd probably be in this corner back here. Like maybe not this building specifically, but there's this like nook in here. Maybe it's like amongst these buildings in there somewhere, right? Because it'd be like probably 3 or 4. You can probably see hints of buildings there. There's another building there. There's probably a whole bunch back there, right? And so when I'm building this, I want this to feel like it's amongst one of these. Maybe it's like a whole garden kind of area that has these things, you know? So, but let's see. Question, Kenny, I might have a question. I'm new to conceptual design. I wonder how do we match all the asset for a scene? Because everything I did looks kind of off from each other. How do you match the shape design? Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think shape design is tough, right? It's something where you have to know what the rules are, right? So for example, like I'll break this down really quickly for anybody. Boom, there you go. So whenever you have a shape, right, there's rules that you need to establish with it, right? Because there's a formed language, there's a language, there's consistency, right? And so let's say you had a square. Oops, let's do something like that. Boom, something like that. So let's say you had a square, right? That's the shape, right? And then, you know, one of the things that you wanted to do was cut off a corner, right? Because you like this 45-degree angle, right? And so now your base shape language is this kind of square with a cut off edge, right? This is very like, this is going into like that sci-fi territory where we have, you know, when you make something sci-fi, just, you know, put a cut line diagonally down the thing, right? And so anytime you design something, right, you want to understand, you don't have to always cut off a corner, but you do want to understand there's different kind of angles happening here. In this case right here, right there, this angle is 90, right? 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, right? There's 3 90-degree angles and there's 2 45-degree angles, right? Degrees, 45 degrees. And so it's not important that you always hit 2 to 4, right? It's not those exact numbers that I'm talking about. But what you do want to understand is there is more of these than there are of these, right? The proportion is different. So when you start designing cityscapes, when you start designing a vehicle, start designing whatever, right? There has to be this understanding of there needs to be a lot less of the 45-degree cuts, right? 1 out of 4, one corner kind of gets cut out of 4. And so when you design a building now, right? Let's say we had a floor of a building, right? Or like, you know, just a tall skyscraper. You know, maybe leaving a square is fine. Maybe cutting off a corner makes it a little bit closer to that language. But you can't cut it in this angle here. That's not the same thing. You know what I mean? The degree in which this angle, I don't know what angle these are, right? But this is 90, which is good. This isn't 45, right? This doesn't equal 45 degrees, right? And so now your language is different because now you're introducing other different cuts. 45 degrees. Sorry, degrees is not percent. So with that in mind, right, this is kind of like the base idea that you want to think about. This is a very simplified version, right? And it's not that it's not that this can't happen. These aren't like hard set rules. These are just guidelines that kind of help you along the way. A lot of it is like finding forms, repeating it. So now that we kind of covered that like softer understanding, right? This more, you know, easier to kind of manage idea, going into my thing here, right? There's some of these, they actually don't feel like they fit. I think this building on the left side here, this building here doesn't feel like it fits. The language is slightly different, right? The proportions that I'm kind of seeing here, right? We have boom, boom. So if this is 100%, this ends up being like 80. This is like 5. And this is like, I don't know, what, 15%, right? Of the overall shape, right? So we have like 85% gold, percent, oops, not degrees, percent Wait, yeah, percent. Sorry, not degrees. Gold. And then we have 15% like white, whatever that is, whether it's metal, whether it's stone, right? But 15% white. 15% white. W, right? And so that's that proportion. And then looking right next to it, right? I don't know. What is that? 25? What is that? 20? There's another 5 probably. And then you have, what is that? That's about 50. It's about, I'd say it's pretty close to half, right? You know, I don't know the exact math. Measure it out, you know, do your thing. But the whole point is the percentages of the gold is different. This kind of becomes 50-50. 50-50, right? Gold to white. And so the proportions of the materials are different. It's not that that can't happen. It's just one of the things that helps because, you know, when you look at these, the proportions aren't exactly the same, but they're a lot closer, right? This gap, 15 to 50, 85 to 15 and 50 to 50 is really far apart. This, even though it might not have the same level of proportions, you can kind of see there's a resemblance, right? And the amount of detail that's on the bottom side there kind of matches, right? Like all the details are pushed towards the bottom and the top, right? Bottom and the top. And so a lot of these details are consistent with each other, even though this is a pillar and this is a building, right? The proportions are roughly the same. So we're looking for a rule set, right? Which is what we did here. And then we're looking for consistency. Once you get that, right, obviously it comes up to taste and, you know, various things like that. But it's kind of a general understanding of like how we go about analyzing, you know, these things. Because this happens all the time where like we design one thing, right? It looks pretty cool. And then all of a sudden you try to design, you know, something else in that. And then it's just like, it's a whole different world. It's almost like cartoony sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully that helps. It's a whole thing. I know that we're covering a lot of form language stuff here. We're going into hard surface things. But yeah, form language, it really does become difficult. Like try to rewatch some of the past months live streams with especially weeks 1 and 2, where I'm kind of really figuring out how all these pieces work together. But this breakdown here is kind of like the super basic version, and then looking at how I applied it, and then, you know, we go from there, right? So hopefully that makes sense. All right, so looking at some pictures here, you know, I'm looking at like, I don't know, like 5 people's worth of space, right, in a building. So it's gonna be pretty small. There's some things that I kind of liked. There's like cat fur all over me. I'm like really itchy. Anyway, sorry. There's like little things I liked of each one, right? Because some of them, like the scale is a lot bigger. Like this one, the building is much bigger, right? Compared to like, you know, like this one. But this shape, I think, is a lot closer to what I want. This is the interior space, you know, of a different building or whatever. And I'm just trying to find like things that I kind of like. And what I want you to do, whenever it's your turn to do this, right? Just understand, you have to know what you like out of each reference, right? And it sounds very basic. It sounds very like, yeah, of course, you know. But when you get a packet of reference like this, you'll get stuff like this, where they're like, you know, we really like this reference. And then you'll get stuff like this, we really like this reference. And all they really say, to be honest, a lot of times, is like, hey, this reference is pretty cool. And sometimes, and in this case, for me specifically, I'm not even talking about the house itself, right? I'm looking at the way it meets up with the water. I like this overhang here, right? And it's like all of this down. What is happening? Oh, sorry. All of that down is what I actually like, right? So if you actually look at this reference, I'm like, you know, it feels weird where like, why'd you include that? But I like this stuff, you know, but I know that. And then when you actually look at this building, I actually like this proportion, not so much the shape, right? There's some cool things about it for sure, but overall it's mostly about the proportions. And so if you ever get references from a client, ever get references from, you know, your lead or whatever, just know that, because, you know, you can kind of fall into like some really bad mistakes because you didn't know what you were pulling. Same reason why I'm so insistent about when you use a reference board, pick 1 or 2 images that really set you up, because if you don't, you kind of get lost in like how much reference you actually have. You know what I'm saying? So, but cool. Let's do this. So I'm like really itchy right now. I'm like all this cat fur all over me. I think because I'm like sweating, and then like there's like cat fur just blowing around because of like all the fans I usually have on. All right, let's go. So back to Blender, right? I have my guy here. So now looking at this with this new set of information, right? You want to, you know, it's too big right now. It probably doesn't work, right? So I probably want that a little bit smaller. And then I want to get this just proportionally feeling correct, right? So I'm going to kind of just make this 1-story building, right? Whatever it is. That probably seems a little bit small. Scale that up just a hair. Boom. Yeah, maybe. So, okay. The first thing I want to do, right? Something that I want to caution everybody against, right? Whenever you're starting to like model things or just designing in general, there's a big, so I keep, see, look at that, pulling cat hairs out of my mouth. Anyway, there's a big tendency, right, to just jump into building the small stuff. I'm like, ooh, I have this little ladder. There's like this, there's a bucket over here. And then, you know, you're trying to figure out all these like, oh, the roof shingles kind of look like this. Don't worry about any of that right now, right? Something that happens a lot, especially in like, you know, at work and various things like that. When there's a big problem, right, we tend to avoid it, right? Because it's stressful. It's, you know, it doesn't induce joy, right? Because, you know, I had this problem where I'd be like painting something, like especially like in a big scene where it's like there's like a building and there's like the main kind of like focal point that we're supposed to be aware of, right? And then I'll start and I'll kind of start painting clouds, and I'll render the hell out of that cloud, and I'll paint the ground, I'll render the hell out of the ground, and then like I'll be painting like birds, right? And the bird will be more rendered than the actual building that I need to be designing. You know what I mean? And that's a problem, right? Because when you turn that in, it doesn't really solve the problems that we need. All the details are kind of figured out, but the main meat of the thing, you know, isn't established. And so if you're new to designing, right, always try to figure out the structure of the main thing first, right? Start simple and work larger. The structure meaning, you know, what's the general footprint of the building? What's the general shape of that roof? The general proportions that we're going for? Because if you don't know those things, everything else on top doesn't matter, right? We work from big to small, right? So I want to keep this as simple as possible. And I'm just going to start just designing something kind of based off of these buildings here, but not exactly these buildings. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into this. I'm going to have this on my second monitor, so if you guys are wondering what I'm looking at, that be what I'm looking at. Actually, I'll leave Photoshop here. I'll just bring this over. Cool. All right. Let's close that. Oh, actually, that's the demo. There you go. Don't need this reference. Don't need this one right now. Okay. All right. I don't need the schedule anymore either. Cool. So first thing, right, I established is just, you know, just a general kind of main shape. Let me delete that camera. Delete that light source. All right. Now, I'm probably going to need a roof of sorts. So I'm just going to put something in there. And, you know, like I've said before, like I've shown, a lot of the times, these are just placeholders to kind of get me part of the way there. You know what I mean? Like, understand that I'm gonna evolve from here, right? There's a level of like, you know, it's okay for now, but I'm not gonna like stress over it. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause a lot of times I just need something to be there just so just so it works, right? Just so it looks like a damn house, right? So I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna modify some of these shapes really quickly. Boom, scale. I needed like a bigger angle here. Boom, boom, something like that. And then I want to grab this point here. And then proportional editing. Is that proportional editing? I think so. I want to elongate that, maybe. If there's any questions, definitely feel free to ask about it. I am open to any suggestions. Boom. I don't know, something like that. Right, we're just kind of putting stuff around. Let's see what happens. I'm actually looking at my reference over there on the second. And I'm just kind of like slowly copying something. You know, I'm not like married to it, right? It's not like, it's not something that I need to 100% stick to, but it is something that it kind of just guides some of my decisions, right? Boom, scale that out. There it goes. Pop. Cool. So, weird looking shape, I'll admit that, but we're getting somewhere, right? It's rolling. And then I'm gonna like I usually do, I'm just gonna start duplicating shapes, putting them around, seeing what happens, right? Already, you can kind of see how that looks something like a building, right? You know, not too crazy. Boom. I'm gonna move my guy, and something I will highly recommend: keep a person around. You know, you could put in a real person. I just put in a 6-foot block. If you just open, if you just like add in a cube, it's always gonna be 6 feet, or it's what is it, 2 meters, 6 feet. And so I just kind of shrink it down so it's like the thinness of a person versus looking like a cube, just so I'll have something that's a little closer to kind of what I want. I'll try to always do that. I don't always, but you know, generally speaking, I'll try to do that as much as possible, just because you need to kind of stay in proportion, you know. There's something that happens, I'll show you later if you want, but there's something that happens a lot whenever you work out of scale. The lighting and stuff doesn't behave the same, so it kind of becomes a little bit weird, you know, so. Yeah, this, whenever I'm starting, I always try to like use pieces that I have, right? Like you saw me make one piece, right? I literally I took 10 seconds to make this, and then I already used it twice. There's 4 pieces, 3 of which are the same piece. You know what I mean? And this is kind of like, it leads back into like some of those form language consistencies, right? Whenever I was doing some of this stuff here, right? I made this one here, and then I made the one to the right of it, right? And then I use that piece to kind of make some off the bottom, make the bottom left one here. And then I started, you know, using pieces over and over again. And this is kind of how I maintain that consistency. I don't really think about it that much whenever I'm actually working, because the process that I'm doing allows me to just, you know, use pieces, right? It all stays the same because they are the same pieces. And you're kind of worrying about that main structure, right? So whenever you're designing, right, I try to like recycle a lot, or as much as I can. A lot of these processes that I'm using here were derived from, you know, the idea of using 3D, right? Or even the stuff I do in 3D was derived from doing stuff in 2D. When I photo bash, I use the same pieces. When I make a painting, I use the same pieces. Even this painting here, right, is derived from the same painting that we did for the beach centipede thing, right? If you guys remember that from the dune buggy project, there's that mountain shape, right? The rock shape that I did, and then some of the trees and the bushes are from Was it? I think it was the shrine, the Sky Temple one, right? Those are the same bushes, right? Go look back at those projects. Look at this. Look at those. It's the same shit, right? It's the same thing. And then I use the pieces of the buildings, right? Where the hell are they? Show all windows, pow, right? Use these buildings that I did in week 1, and I put it in here, right? And so a lot of the painting is just a lot of structural things where it's like you just think of the main graphic reads, you think of the main pieces, and then you put it all together, and there you go. You know, it's a lot of recycling. But the cool part cool part about it is you're kind of compounding detail. So what happens is that when I make one thing and I shrink it down and duplicate it around, right? You're constantly you're kind of getting the detail, shrinking it, and multiplying it, and so the detail kind of looks a lot more natural versus like if you just kind of paint that yourself. You know what I mean? So cool. Let's see. That's kind of cool. Ooh. So the I just said ooh for a reason. So I'm trying to figure out like what do I need to do here? Like what's the whole point of this building? You know what I'm saying? Like there's there's a function, right? Because when you think about a car, right, there's there's something to it. There's a person capacity. There's a job that it has. You know what I'm saying? So like a lot of this stuff really it kind of defines itself when you're doing a vehicle. With a building, you kind of get in the zone of like, well, it has walls, it has a roof. You're kind of done, right? But you can kind of push the designs a little bit further, right? Especially with the painting that I have, right? I'm just kind of bouncing off some of these ideas. I'm growing them further. There's these kind of waterfalls, right? There's the whole area is kind of, surrounded by water. And so, what do you need in like a tea ceremony, right? You need water. And so, what if, the building itself is able to kind of gather that water? It's not like plumbing in the sense that pipes leak to it and then they got water. What if it's just pulling it from the outside source? You know what I mean? And so what if I created a shape that kind of makes that idea relevant, right? So if you actually look at this, you have this kind of bowl shape here, this shape right there. And it's literally this shape, and this shape flattened, flipped, right? And it creates that bowl shape. But now you have this dish that what if it's like, the back part of it is kind of like catching some waterfall stuff, I don't know. But this is part of that design thinking I was talking about earlier, where you kind of create a function for this thing, and it might not be plausible, but it might not work in real life because there's all sorts of problems, but it doesn't have to like work in real life, because it's not from real life. It's from imagination. And so all I got to do now is solve the problems that are associated with this function, right? There's a main thing kind of surrounding the building where, what if it gathers water? This is just an idea I randomly thought up. I don't know if I'm going to stick with it, but the whole point is I'm going to just run with it and see what happens. And then there's more issues that are going to be, that are going to kind of stem from this. You know what I'm saying? There's more things that are going to happen, but you just figure it out, right? So let's see. There's like cat fur everywhere on me. Sorry. He's like sleeping right there too. I don't know if, can you see his foot? I think you can see his foot. It's right there. Hey, you guys are quiet today. What's going on? How's the projects going? How's portfolio? We got Lightbox coming up. Anybody gonna be there? Is anybody working on stuff to be there?
Are you?
Oh, I'm
My
taking.
bad, bro.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh no, you go, bro.
I was just gonna say I'm taking 2 brainstorm classes. I'm taking DC1 right now and the Flash class for Blender. It's like the stylized Blender.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so I'm learning Blender right now, and it's cool to like watch you work in it because like I'm just learning it for the first time.
Nice. Yeah, man. Whatever I'm doing, don't do it. It's not correct. Whatever your teacher's telling you, do that. I'll say it like that, but my Blender skills be pretty gross. Well, who's the teacher for that one?
It's Sam Fernandez. Sam Fernandez.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I know him. Cool. Yeah, we went to school at the same time, but I was kind of a little. I just been there a little longer whenever he started. So, but yeah, no, Sam's cool. What were you gonna say, Lauren?
I was saying, are you working on anything for Lightbox?
I am. We have some projects in the works. We're gonna be doing the thing there. I'm not gonna announce it now, but you know what I'm talking about. I'll make a formal announcement a little bit later, but it's going to be there. So you know that. I'm trying not to say anything.
We've been sitting on some heat.
Sitting on some heat. There you go. From the man himself. So for those wondering, you'll see. I'll probably announce it soon. It's basically done. I have some just various things to do to it, but overall, it's coming. And then that I want to sell some prints as well. I have a series that I'm going to be working on. Well, that I'm already working on. And then yeah, it's gonna be good. I do want to figure out like more stuff to do with like digital vegetable stuff, right? I think like I'm excited about possibly I don't know, expanding this just a little bit further. Like it could be, I don't know, more formal tutorials. I think right now there's we're doing like live streams which is 2 hours long, and I'm trying to see like, oh, what are some other things that we could do to make it more manageable. I don't know if I like the idea of shorts quite yet though. I'm just kind of like, it's if a 2 hour window is blocking you from learning something, I don't want to say you're not going to make it, but you know what I mean? Like if 2 hours stops you from achieving your dreams, a 2 hour video stops you from achieving your dreams, what's the term? I don't think you have a dream. You know what I mean? I'll say like that. It sounds harsh, but it is what it is. So yeah, I wanna expand a little more, and kind of figure out like how to do some of those things just a little bit better, right? But I'm hesitant, to say the least. 'Cause that means more work on my end.
I guess. Yeah, I guess like the whole like YouTube growth thing is that you have to follow whatever is like relevant, which is kind of counter to learning in general. So.
Like I'm glad you bring that up, like, because I think like it's weird, right? As a teacher, there's somebody that actually teaches concept art, right? Like taught and teaches, right? There's because I see so many YouTubes popping out, and there's some really good ones, absolutely, right? Like some of the stuff Jose Vega's doing, and some of the stuff like some other people are doing. It's great, right? They're professionals. They know what they're talking about. They know what they're saying. They're doing it right. But then there's like, 5 secrets to master concept art. I'm like, there's that doesn't work, man. None of that works. It's like, use lens flares. It's like, you know what I mean? I use lens flares, but it doesn't mean you're gonna master anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many like, I don't know. It's just not. I just don't feel good about that. You know what I mean? And like, like to put out something that is, I don't know, very clickbaity, right? Because it gets the clicks. Let's be real. But a lot of it is bullshit, and it's how do we it's just making something that people are gonna click on, and if that's your goal, then that's, I don't know, it's just not right. At least I don't feel it's right, but I don't know. I'm just a guy, so who knows. Maybe that's why my engagement rate's low. I don't know. Like, it's weird too because like I think especially in like classes and stuff, I'll get like things where like, oh, have you heard of this trick? You know, and it's like, or even like a big thing. I'll see people like they always kind of have this trick that they do. A lot of it's like a noise filter, overlay layers, sharpening tricks, unsharpening tricks. You know, that they heard online, and it's like they'll do this thing where it's like, oh, I put a this filter on, but it's like not how you would do that, not why you would do that, you know, and it's very it's very harmful, I feel, you know. I don't, as somebody like that like sees that daily, you know, it's like, oh god, you know, especially like a lot of newer artists do that too, and it's very I don't know, it's not very it like I feel like it slows people down, you know, in their growth. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'm just an old man at this point. So. All right, dude, check it, son. We got a building, baby. So we got a roof. We got a thing, right? And something I want everyone to understand. I'm not, I guess, sticking too closely to my original designs, right? I mean, there's a level of consistency that I have, right? You know, you can kind of see where it's going. But for those of you that have this from previous weeks or do this step, right? Like, because, you know, I told you before where like we're just kind of figuring out some shapes. I tell all of my students this that are doing like portfolio pieces. Do not stick to this just because you did it before, right? Something that everyone needs to understand. The idea needs to evolve, right? As you're getting closer and closer, right? There's a lot of things that need to be fixed that don't look that great. On a zoomed out view, right? When you're looking at it this far away, like, wow, that looks pretty cool. You know what I mean? The building looks like a building, you know? But when you zoom in, it's complete trash, right? A lot of this does not work and it doesn't make any sense. And you have to understand that. So when you're designing, right, use this opportunity to grow the design, make it better, make it make more sense, add what you need to add, because at the end of the day, you know, that's what we do as concept artists. We're constantly improving ideas. You know, just because an idea kind of like started a certain way doesn't mean it needs to end that way, right? This can be kind of confusing because I do teach like portfolio things, and I'll have them do steps like this, and then they'll just kind of remake it. But because the crit that I gave them during this step was like, oh, it looks great, you know, it looks good. And then I really won't have too much to say after that. I'm like, okay, pick the ones you like, let's go. But then they'll do the same design and then they'll try to like finish it off. They'll like kind of like just essentially start rendering it. I'm like, oh no, this design's trash. I'm like, but like a couple weeks ago, you said it was pretty good. And the reason that happens is because the criteria for what makes a good drawing or painting or design is different depending on what phase that you're on, right? We're looking at proportions and just general understanding here. And then once you get deeper, right, you're getting into like, oh, okay, we need to have a reason for this thing to do a thing. This needs to make sense. This needs to whatever. You know what I'm saying? So just know that. Just understand that whenever we're doing stuff like this, don't be so strict with like trying to maintain the exact idea. You want the same kind of general purpose, but you don't need it to be 100% the same, you know? Cool. I want to kind of do this thing here. As I'm going through this, I want this building to be a bit bigger, right? Not bigger in the sense that like it contains more people, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh, what if this is the inside wall? So instead of a box for a room, right? Maybe it's like it's a donut, you know, so the middle is like a back room, like a back room of a building, right? You don't normally go back there as a customer. And so maybe the center is like the storage or whatever, and the outside ring is kind of where a lot of people sit, and it can kind of accommodate a couple different groups, maybe 4 or 5, and then there's an outside ring from there. You know what I mean? There's like screens that kind of go around that, and then you know you have your thing. And so this is like a interior wall, and then there would be like scale exterior wall. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. But you know, it'd be like if I took this 3 P section, delete. There we go. It'd be like that, right? Obviously I can't show you when it's up like that, but it'd be like that, right? So that's what we're trying to do. And I'm just like, and the idea is just evolving, because right now I'm like, you know, before I was like, oh, this would be kind of cool, but now it's like, oh, this is even better, you know. And I'm just coming up with things. I'm just, some would say, making shit up, you know. Scale Z, boom, cool, sick. All right, let's get it. I need something else. Let's go with cylinder. And so as I'm making this, you know, there's a couple different things happening. There is me making things up, right? Just like what I was talking about. I'm just like, you know, like the inner wall shape. What the hell? Sorry, the inner wall shape. And then like this roof part, I literally just flipped it upside down, right? Like that's how it was. And then I was like, oh, it'd be better if it was upside down, right? Just made that shit up on the spot, right? And then now I'm like, well, this needs to be a building. It needs to actually work, right? And so this is when you start figuring out, okay, this is what that is. You know, here's a floor because we need something to stand on. You know what I mean? It's like we are, there's 2 parts to it, right? There's the imagination side of like, you're just making shapes that look kind of cool. And then you have to dial that back. You know, they still need a place to stand. They still need supports. They still need, you know, all sorts of different things. And I'm kind of walking my way through that. I kind of bounce between the 2. I allow the new ideas to kind of come in and help me make a design that makes sense. And then I try to figure out and solve the problems that are coming, right? Because, right, oh, sorry, tap the mic. Because right now, the build without this, right, it's like, well, where do I stand? Why is that slope there? How does that work, you know? But then, you know, we're bringing it in, you know, so yeah. Let's see. Boom, scale, go like that, something like that. Maybe there's like some sort of bench thing. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Cool. And so the reason why I'm putting this floor plan in here, right, is it's like I was remembering this overhang right here. Because now, like, thinking about this, if we had this and there's like a pond or something at the bottom, and we're at the bottom of a waterfall or bottom of a stream, let's say, and then it's just like catching water, funneling it into the building. They're using it somehow. Maybe there's a boiler in there, right? It's like thinking about the mechanics behind the lever espresso machine, right? So just breaking this down just a little bit. I know I'm kind of bouncing around, but this is what happens in my head, right? We have this thing here. This is a cap. This is just like decoration, so that's whatever. There's a lid right there. You unscrew that, and this right here is a boiler, right? So that water goes inside. It boils. You can see the amount of liquid by the level thing right there. This is the group head, right? This is the lever that basically opens up a valve and the water goes in. There's the espresso, the portafilter right there with the espresso in there, or the coffee in there, and then the water goes through and then, you know, comes out as espresso, right? This is like the on button. And so I'm thinking about these things, this function, and so now, right, going into this, boom. I'm gonna screenshot this just so I can draw on this. I can do grease pencil, but I don't know, I like Photoshop better. Make a new thing, pop, there you go. Desktop. Cool, so I have this, right? I'm thinking, oh, what if the water comes inside? Maybe it comes to the top, I don't know, right? I kind of like the side better. It feels a little more natural. It feels like there's this if you've ever have experienced tea ceremony, right? There's a tremendous amount of water. That's you. Oh my god. Sorry, my cat just like jumped through. What are you doing, dude? There's a tremendous amount of water that's used during this process, right? Like, it's not just the tea part. There's like the washing of the cup that heats up the cup as well, and then they put the leaves in the cup and they pour the first batch of water, but then they dump it out because they're like prepping the tea. I don't know exactly how it works. I don't really do it, but I have seen it. I did some research on it before this. And then like after the third rinse of the tea leaves, then you drink that. You know what I mean? And so like there's, yeah, I can, have this as an opening that kind of receives water, but I like the idea of water pouring on top of here, and it just kind of runs down the side, almost like one of those like a water fountain type of thing, right? Like one of those water sculpture or whatever's. And there's like a bowl or some mechanism that catches it all. Maybe it's bigger, maybe it's smaller, whatever. And then we have some sort of funnel system that goes into whatever, like maybe there's a bunch of mechanics back here, right? There's a boiler, there's a pipe, there's a whatever. Maybe inside of this whole thing, there's some sort of machine that kind of heats it all up. Maybe it's like a stove, like a wood flame thing, because this is a fantasy kind of place. Maybe it's a little less high tech than an electric heater, or maybe the water itself is heated, right? It's like a hot spring or something, and then, right, maybe there's some sort of like tap system that kind of comes out of it that they can kind of access the water, and then they do the ceremony thing. Maybe this is like your quadrant here. You kind of come in, you sit down, there's like a table, and then they do the thing. You know what I'm saying? And like you see how the ideas one after another is just flowing in, right? Because I did one thing. I was like, oh, what if this caught water? And then the whole structure changed. It was like the whole idea like evolved into something else, And this is really what I want to explain. It's hard to just explain that. I guess I just kind of did, but it's hard to like just explain it without seeing visuals and seeing me walk through it. You know what I mean? There's something about I don't know, just letting ideas flow, and you have to do something that seems weird. You know what I mean? A big problem that I used to have. I'll say used to. Maybe I still do. Who knows? I would dismiss things because it didn't initially make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like you have an idea and you're like, it's like, that wouldn't work. And then you kind of move on, But that's the whole thing, right? Make it work. You're the concept artist. You're the artist that is, in charge of this idea coming through, right? And so if you're somebody that kind of like dismisses ideas very quickly, somebody that, just hears something like, that wouldn't work because, that's dumb and whatever, so on and so forth, right? You want to rethink that. You want to make sure that when you do this, you kind of come into it with an open mind, right? I had this, we were doing some stuff for that. Maybe I explained this. I talk about this idea a lot because I felt so like mad while I did it. I was lead concept artist, and then we were working on Mouse Guard, right? Let me show you a picture. Let me pull up a picture as we talk about it. All right, check it, son. So, we're working on Mouse Guard, and then there's this scene. There's this axe that needs to be made, and Mouse Guard is mice, right? We know this. It's a book, or it's a thing. It exists, and so, the idea of mice in like cheese. You know what I mean? Where like there's mice like cheese, whether it's true or not. Whatever, but it's common in like life to know that, right? Cats and milk, dogs and bones, same thing, right? And so I was like, oh, what if we took like some of that form language and applied it to the axe? And then it wasn't my project, so it wasn't my thing. It was the other artists were doing it, right? And they're like, wow, that sounds dumb, so they never did it. And I was just sitting there with the idea, and eventually I actually got a turn at designing that axe, and like. I was like, you take the form language of like cheese, like when we think cheese, we think like Swiss cheese, because that's like the classic cheese, like the wedge with the holes in it, right? And I was like, that could be kind of cool, right? And when you think about it, when you think of like axe and cheese, that's like sounds dumb, dude. Like what is wrong with you, right? But if you know anything about blacksmithing, right? Not that I truly do or anything, but there's this finish on knives. It's like hammered steel, right? So let me see a good. There it goes. That's a dumb looking knife. Something like that. There you go. So there's this thing that they do, and it's like it's a surface finish, and it just adds decoration, hardens the body, whatever it does, right? But the whole point is that this exists, right? This is a thing, and what does that kind of look like? You know what I mean? And it's something where, like when I designed the axe, I put the not that the project never went through, but like when I designed the axe, I put this texture on there because like this hammered kind of dimpling right here on the backside of the knife. I put it on there because it made more sense than like a Damascus pattern, right? Damascus pattern being the pattern on the right here. Actually, it's the different kind of metals stacked up and kind of weavy. But it made more sense because it matches with the theme a little bit more. You know what I mean? But when you just think about it on a surface level, it's like, oh, that sounds dumb. Like, why would you ever do that? But then, like, I'm actually decently happy with how that axe turned out. And like, you can do stuff like that where it's like, it just looks, I mean, it's not that it looks like cheese, but it fits just a little bit closer, And this is what I'm talking about. When you design something, be open to the idea. Make it work, because when you're a concept artist or a viz dev artist, you are going to get the dumbest ideas you've ever heard, right? Somebody's going to come up to you, right? Your lead, your producer, whoever, and they're going to be like, hey, we have this really cool idea of like hip hop mice, in like piloting spaceships, like listening to music. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, it sounds dumb. But that's not the point. It's your job to make it cool. Does that make sense? Right? Understand that your job as the designer is to make it cool. Any reference that you bring in helps you decide on how to kind of turn certain things. You know what I mean? So it's about just being open, I hear this all the time, especially from students, especially from people that like I'm doing classes with or whatever, and they're like, that wouldn't work. I'm like, why wouldn't it work? Just make it work. You know what I mean? And the dumb ideas come all the time, but you have to be, good enough to kind of make that work, right? So, but yeah, rant over, right? But overall, right, just general understanding of be the concept artist that you need to be, right? So, boom, scale that. And so now I'm just kind of making things work. I'm trying to start setting things up to make it feel like, whatever it's supposed to feel like. So, yeah. Let's go. Boom. I'm going to grab this piece right there. Can I grab every other one? Select. Actually, hold up. Is this possible? I'm about to do some magic. All right. Boom. Cool. Right? Check it. Select. Check or deselect. Bro, let's go. All right, make that wider. Boom. Shift D. Oops. Shift D. Boom. P. Selection. Tap. Tap. Cool. Scale. A. Extrude. Nope. Sorry. Extrude. Nope. Alt extrude. There it is. I like to think I'm getting faster. Boom. Select the bottoms. Extrude down. And there you go. Supports. I do like this about 3D, I will say. This is the nice part. This is where I'm like, I see where you guys are good. I see where you guys are coming from. Oops. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. All right. Any other questions? We're kind of we're getting close to the end, right? We're kind of, it's like 12:41 right now, or 12:41 my time, whatever time it is for you guys. But just curious, what's on your minds? Who's killing it right now?
Yeah, I got one, Kenny.
What's up, dude? I knew I could rely on you.
So say like you're tackling a project, right? And you have like a ton of different environments. You know you're gonna have work through. Maybe not like an exhaustive list, but you know there's gonna be a lot coming down the pipeline. They want you to kind of pick off a chunk, somewhere to work from, whether it's decided for you or you choose. Where typically do you like dive into environments that maybe won't make it all the way through to production, but would be like something that's beyond just a rough concept and is something that would be like actionable for production, right? Like, how would you know where to start? Would you just say, okay, I'm going to pick something important to the character, or pick something that's like easiest? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like if I was given, like for example, if I didn't do this painting, right? Like this one, and then like let's say my senior gave this to me and they're like, hey, can you start breaking this down? Like where do I start?
I guess I mean more, a little more high level, like in terms of, hey, we want you to do a bunch of scenes like this. Like, how did you choose to arrive at doing that scene out of all the scenes, right? Because you can pick anyone from your story or from your IP, but it's almost like that's equally daunting, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get that. So yes, that is a big thing, right? Something as a student, I will say, it's a lot harder for students to kind of know where to go, right? Because there is nobody guiding you, right? The issue with a lot of like I don't know, I don't say being a student, but like, you know, the issue with doing like student work is that there is no art director, there is no client, so you're kind of making shit up. But you've never been, not you specifically, but just people in general, students haven't been in a working scenario, so they can't simulate what that even is like. You know what I'm saying? It's like me trying to train to be an astronaut. It's like I've never been one. How the fuck would I know what to do? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And so oftentimes, you know, you can get kind of lost when you're trying to start those designs. Really, at work, it's a lot easier because they'll straight up tell you, like, hey, like, you know, we have this area, you know, it's this temple area. There's this huge rock in the middle, and then there's this kind of like shrine altar area, right? Especially in animation, because in animation, there's already a script. So they're like, okay, so the character walks up to the temple entrance, and then, you know, looks out on this vast kind of temple, right? And then walks up to the kind of altar and then prays, and the, you know, whatever the storyline is, right? And so literally for me, I just design everything that they're supposed to be seeing, because there's things back here, like, you know, the kind of top floors of what those pillars are, some of those like waterfall areas. I don't need that look just yet. I don't need the designs quite yet. What I need is the entrance to that temple right there, or, you know, I need that shrine altar area, because that's actually where the character goes. You know what I'm saying? And so whenever I start designing, I kind of look for those key points. Usually I start with an establishing shot where it's like, here's the whole space, or most of it, you know, a good chunk of it, and the mood, tone, feeling. And then I'll do maybe 2 or 3 more shots, right? First one of this one being the entrance right over here, right? The next thing, maybe one of the buildings. And then the next thing, maybe inside the hall back here, right? The kind of corridor-esque place, right? And so with those 3 images, you kind of have a nice vertical slice of that world. But it comes down to importance. But in a student project, you have to make that up, right? You just want to look at your space, look at your story, and be like, okay, there's, you know, the character walks through this building. So design that building, right? Don't design some random one. Design the one that you were actually engaging with. And then like, oh, they see the enemy castle in the background. Well, show us what that looks like, you know? And then it kind of like guides you through that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very like, I mean, it sounds very logical, but it is very difficult to kind of just know how to do that right off the bat, because you know, it's just so like it can be very difficult to know these things just because if you've never done it before, it's you know, it's weird. It's like, why would I, you know, how would I know that? You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, just start from, for me, just start from whatever it is that you need to kind of show off. Usually the safest bet is like try to establish the whole area and then the focal points that you start setting up in each scene. Like, you know, for me, it's that shrine area. Start with that, you know, because if it's a focal point of the last one, it's a good thing to lead into for the next painting. Because when they flip the page, they're like, oh shit, that's that, except closer. You know what I mean? Oh, 3. My mic's so low. Sorry. Mic noise. I apologize. It's like super close to my hand. That's why I keep bumping it. Cool. So at this point, right, we're kind of, I don't want to say done, but like there's a lot of this is basically going to be me just kind of going. So, you know, for those kind of like starting this, like for those that are like wanting to follow along, just kind of know like, oops, just kind of know that's what I'm going to be doing next. So just, yeah. So what I'd recommend for those that are following along, try to, you know, go through this process, right? If you haven't done the first section of it yet, right, where the where I did the ideations, these right here, right? If you haven't done that yet, give it a shot, right? Look back at that week 1, the way the technique that I used, the way I went about it. Check out week 2 on my explanation for June, by the way. Check out how I kind of explained in what I was thinking about as I did it, and then it kind of set you up to start modeling something, right? I'm just kind of building. I'll probably come up with a couple different ideas. Right now, we have a strong idea in terms of like the water kind of enters this thing here, and then there's like machines in the back, so on and so forth, right? It works out okay. But I might want to come up with a couple different options. This way I get some things to kind of play with as we're moving into the next step, right? The next step we're going to be doing is variations. So we're going to take this idea, take all the ideas, pull them all together, hopefully make something kind of cool, and then, you know, go from there. So, boom. Let's see. I kind of like how this is going. Do I have to select that again? My God. Shift D, there you go. P, select, there it is. That's what I needed. Cool. Extrude. Extrude along faces. Something like that. And kind of like, maybe not. Hold up. Is that extruding correctly? Yeah, it looks right. Is that too big? I'm like trying to figure out like how do we set up a cool like a cool separated space. You know what I mean? Cuz like, you know, I'm just trying to imagine like cuz I wanted to make it bigger cuz like, you know, maybe there's a couple different like rooms or something in there, right? So now I'm trying to think like how do I make this like more, I don't know, like just better, right? Like how do I make this space functional? Because, you know, you walk around, go to your stall, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And then you do your whole ceremony thing. And I'm just like figuring shit out. I don't know how it's going to work out. But that's the whole point. You know, you're just taking your time and you're doing your thing. And, you know, hopefully you come up with a solution that kind of makes sense, right? Maybe there's like too many fins here. So maybe I need to delete a couple, right? L, 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 and L. There it goes. Boom. Hide that. That's not bad. I kind of like that. It's still open too. And like, I'm trying to think like, when I'm designing this, right? Sorry, I got super close to the mic there. When I'm designing this, what I'm trying to think about, not just the forms that you're kind of seeing here, right? It's a lot of the what is it gonna feel like if you were there? You know what I mean? Like you're sitting there enjoying your tea and you have a literal stream of water coming down and like hitting like the roof. Like you're sitting, I don't want to say in a waterfall, but like in a small stream. And it's probably steamy, right? Because like I could do this with, like there could be a heater inside there, or this could be like an onsen type of area, like where a natural hot spring area, right? And that could be interesting, you know what I mean? Maybe the water is hot enough to do stuff like that, you know? I don't know. But it's like, it just, the ideas kind of start spiraling, you know what I mean? And you're kind of going down this rabbit hole, spiraling in a good way, not in a shitty like things don't make sense kind of way, but like we're just doing stuff where it's like, yeah, that might not work in real life, but that's not the point, right? The whole point is we're doing something that's kind of fun, kind of interesting, and might be kind of cool, you know? We'll set dress this and make it look good. Let me show you kind of what I'm going for. I guess my goals for like this. There's so much fur all over me. Boom. So, just for everybody, right? In terms of the quality bar that I'm trying to hit, or at least the results that I'm going for, right? I'm trying to go for something like this. Not this design or anything, just this format, right? So there's this guy named Lockdo. He's pretty good. I don't even know if that's how you say his name correctly. But what we're doing here is we're trying to create an isolated view of this architecture. Just gray background is fine. But it's kind of like the building plus like 10% outside of that. So like a little bit of the ground. And then we're going to make something hopefully kind of interesting with it. It'll be kind of more neutrally lit, very similar to what this is. And then hopefully the quality is good enough to where we get like some nice, good close-ups and stuff like that of like kind of what we're seeing here, right? So that's the goal, right? Hopefully, we'll see if we get there. But I'm just kind of making stuff. I'm coming up with ideas as we kind of go. And yeah, So hopefully you can see this base structure. My focus, right, this week is to make a system that makes sense, right? The whole point is it's not just a building with walls and a roof. It's a building that does something in its environment. It's set up a certain way. It has certain ideas associated with it. And so when you try this, remember, understand what the structure is. I can add the filigree, I can add the details, the wall art, all that stuff. It doesn't, all that stuff is we'll figure that out when we get there. We'll kind of pursue this a bit deeper. But make sure that you understand what the structure of the building is doing, the structure of the vehicle, or whatever you're going to do for your hard surface. And then we'll kind of dive deeper from there, right? Do you think it's necessary to do some call outs of the props and the interior from this kind of project? Absolutely. So just as an overall view, for those that are following along doing this project, right? Really what we're going to be doing, right? So I have this painting here. Where the hell is it? Right here, right? So if you had a portfolio, right? And I open this book, right? Shit, maybe not a book. iPad, because I'm young. When you open the iPad, right, this is going to be one of the first paintings that we see, right? Hopefully, right? It's the keyframe. It really gets people like, in tune with whatever. And it's like, it's interesting to see, right? And then the next view, right? Like, that's really cool. What is this space? And then they open the book, like they flip to the next page, click the next page or whatever. And then you end up at, the architecture, right? In this case, we're looking at, what is it? Where's my lock-do example at? Did I already close that? I might have. Anyway, that image that I had a second ago, right? With, here, I just pulled it up again. Look. Nope. Not C. It's okay. Because, the things. Boom. Building. Pow. Right there, right? You flip the page and you get to the architecture, right? And then it's like, oh shit, that building's pretty cool. And you have a little explanation of what it is. Flip the page again, right? We have the props. We have the, in this case, the chickens, the pots, various things, various design elements that make this place make sense. You want to kind of start wide and then work your way deeper and deeper. That's usually how we kind of go about it, because this shows production that you know what you're doing, you know what they need from you. Does that make sense? So when you start designing, try to dive deeper like that. It makes your project or your portfolio make a lot more sense. It is a lot more impressive and more relevant to what production kind of needs, right? So nice. Random Oddity says the algo randomly brought me here. What's this project? Looks interesting. Well, thanks for coming, man. So I'm just a concept artist, and we're just making stuff, right? So with this is we're at like however many episodes of doing this, but we just made we did some blue sky development from a reference board, right? A user reference board. Made a thing, made a painting, made some more paintings, made a painting, and now we're just kind of diving deeper. So but yeah, check out the other episodes. Thanks for coming. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense for everybody from the explanation on what the architecture kind of thing is, kind of how we're going about it. So cool. All right. Any other questions before we dip out? We're kind of wrapping up here. Any for everybody, right? If you're participating and you're kind of doing this along with me, definitely feel free to reach out. Feel free to ask me any questions you want, ask in the Livestream Plus, or even if you're just participating but not like in the feedback sessions, just ask me in the live streams. Be like, hey, what do you think about this idea? You know what I mean? Obviously, I can't give you full paintovers because that's what the Livestream Plus is for, but I can give you some tips on how to make it better, right? This is something where I appreciate everybody watching, and I appreciate everybody kind of being around and seeing this. I will say, you get a lot more out of it when you participate. And the best part is you actually get portfolio pieces if you do pretty well, right? This is, technically speaking, a real class. So this is something that, you would want to participate and actually follow along with, right? I try to break it down in bite-sized, manageable pieces. So hopefully most people of most levels will come out of this with something kind of interesting. At the end of the day, you're kind of learning some mentality and philosophy things when it comes to design and just general kind of concept art stuff, but the real gains actually come from participating. I promise you. You don't have to sign up for the Livestream Plus to participate. You can just participate on your own, but just do it. Try it out. See what happens. If you want feedback, we have that available as well. So, but yeah, we have somebody typing. I'll wait to see what that type is, and then I'll kind of call it a day, but I'll kind of keep working on this for a second. Let's see here. What I like doing. This is a fun phase where, let me save this before I lose it. Demo. Let's see. Coffee ceremony. There you go. Did I spell that right? Yeah. Cool. So what I like doing is I will take this whole thing and then maybe I'll get rid of some parts that I don't want. I don't want these fins so much. Maybe not this floor either. Cool, that's good enough. I'll duplicate it all. I'll merge them together. Oops. Command J. There we go. I'll scale it, stretch it. I'll kind of do what I need to do, and I'll start adding it wherever I feel it's necessary, right? This is the same kind of thing that I was doing before, right? With a lot of the, that looks weird. We'll figure that out. But it doesn't always work, but it does kind of work sometimes. And, it's just something that it kind of helps you build complexity very quickly. So if you're, for those trying to do this, don't be afraid to just mess around and see what happens. You know what I mean? That looks kind of weird, but it is what it is. What the hell? No, I'm sorry. Pop. Nope. Pop. There it is. Maybe that doesn't work. It's probably a bad example, but you guys have seen me do it. I've been doing it for forever now, so you know what I'm talking about. Oh, that's kind of cool. Ooh, that's interesting. Hold the phone. Not that one. That one. There you go. Man, Key's typing an essay. I have a question, Kenny. What if my architecture has a special iconic feature that makes it the focal point? Do you think I should keep it only for the main architecture or keep it consistent for all the components in the project? Yeah, so that's a good question. Something that you could do, right? It depends. It always depends. But the main thing I would probably be wondering about is, does that kind of like special iconic feature, is that specific to that building? For example, like, you know, some buildings have a big like iconic logo on it. You know what I mean? Like there's an icon, there's a statue, something that makes that building very particular. Has something to do with that person or that company or whatever, right? You wouldn't repeat that around because that's special to that person or that thing. You know what I'm saying? That entity. But if it's like some of the eagle motifs that I have or that I'm going to be adding, right? You can kind of add that around because that's about the whole entire world. But if it's like a coffee sign, something specifically coffee related in my case, I would keep it to just the coffee building. You know what I mean? It really depends on what you're trying to do. So just know that. But yeah, it can vary. You know what I'm saying? I know that's extremely unhelpful and it's like very like a maybe, you know, but that's really what it is. I can't, I have to see what you're doing to kind of make that, to be able to answer that better. You know what I'm saying? So. Poop, pop, up. Hold up. There it is. Cool. So I'm gonna kind of keep working on this. I'll push this further. It's gonna be hopefully a better building than this, but you kind of get the idea, right? I'm just getting like I have my building here, right? Where's my building? I have my building sets here, and what I want you to understand, this is a soft pass at design. We're just trying to understand general form language, right? We just want to kind of like get the forms down, get, general proportions, this and that. Now that we're actually forming a design, a real thing that we're going to be doing, you want to understand what the function is. Change the function according to whatever it is that you need to be doing. In this case, it's a coffee ceremony kind of area, so I need to set dress it / design it to function for that space, right? Don't just copy whatever that initial design is. Actually make it real. Make it something that is kind of cool, But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Last month was great. I really appreciate everybody that participated. We're, because of the Livestream Plus's votes, right? We're extending, the topic into next month or this coming July, which is going to be hard surface design, architecture based, right? And so hopefully by the end of this, we'll have some really cool architecture. Right now, we're talking about the big structure, the main ideas. We'll kind of start funneling into a lot of the smaller thoughts and the smaller kind of ideas as we're going through it, but we'll get there when we get there. If you'd like to participate in this month's feedback sessions, right, in my Discord, if you don't have access to my Discord, please join. We'd love to have you. If you go to my Instagram or go to the About section on YouTube, you'll see a link. Click that. It'll take you to the Discord. And once you're in there, if you'd like to join the Livestream Plus, go to my server shop, look for the Livestream Plus role, enroll in that. It is $9.99 a month. Every month you'll be getting 4 feedback sessions on your projects. You can get more than that if you submit more, but at least we have live private feedback sessions every week on whatever projects that you're doing associated with the project that I'm kind of walking you through. And then, so with that in mind, guys, I really appreciate everybody hanging out and just listening to my bullshit, So with that in mind, I'll catch you next week, right? So that's it. That's all I got for you. So see ya.